All right, we got a hole today, a Jackson hole, and we're going to be talking about leverage, human leverage. Enjoy.
Stay alive, go and play outside. I can't be cool forever, but I can stay alive. Jesus was a carpenter, my daddy sold TVs. My mom watched other people's kids and anticipated needs. And when we go down to get groceries, I would flip through magazines.
Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. You might remember me from such businesses as 3T Warrior Academy, Blockheads, which brings you Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto, Age of Radio, which brings you the hit podcast, Good Morning Crypto, Home Video Hustle, What Were They Thinking, the Coach JV podcast, and the Age of Jeremy podcast, along with a plethora of other podcasts that you can see at ageofradio.com. So head on over to ageofradio.com and check out all of the amazing shows that we have. You can also go to YouTube at Age of Radio Verse and make sure that you check that out, because our live show, like our actual live video show where you can see my face, is on there. It's called Mercury. It's a show about podcasting and other pop culture news. And I'm really excited because as I talk about human leverage in today's episode, I'm also going to be talking a little bit about taking money from one business and investing it in another business, because I have been pouring in my profits from our other businesses, such as 3T Warrior Academy and Freedom Insurance, into Age of Radio to build an amazing, amazing setup for interviews. I have a really big passion for having interviews with people, not in the perspective of like arguing them with their ideas, but asking them genuine stuff. Andrew Ross Sorkin is one of my favorite interviewers. He does a book deal or deal book. I never remember what it's called. I'm supposed to be getting an email from him on a regular basis, but I get a lot of emails. So I should probably, and not from him specifically, but like the Deal Book newsletter. It's from New York Times. Andrew Ross Sorkin also has an amazing book coming out in October that I have pre-ordered in the hopes that if I can read it, I can get him to interview. And I'm working on some other interviews. I have to figure out an interview book reading strategy to set up interviews to get people on my podcast in a more timely manner. So I'm trying to figure that out. But apart from that, I want to interview more and more people about what they have going on in their business, in their life, and what they're doing. And I am going to be doing that through not only Mercury for certain things, but also through the Age of Jeremy YouTube channel, which is where I'm going to record a lot of my live interviews when we do them and then release them as podcast episodes. And we're also building a podcast studio at our 3T Warrior Academy. And I'm working on getting a space over on this side of town. And by that, if you don't know, our 3T Warrior Academy is in Mesa. I am in Glendale, and I'm also going to be building a podcast studio over here. So we are going really hard into this. I love not only content, but I do love interviewing people, I have found out, and really enjoy digging deep into the things that they are, I guess, the things that people are doing, and the ideas that people have and the ideologies that people have. And I really want to have that as part of my brand. And so I'm going to do that. And this is part of it. But we're going to be doing our new layout at Tucson Comic Con. And then we're going to be going to UwuCon. And then we're going to be going to other cons. And then we're going to be at TempeCon. And then we're going to expand outside of that. And we're going to do more live segments. We're going to have better playlists on our Age of Radio versus YouTube. So I encourage you all to go and check all of that out for pop culture news and podcasting news as it relates to Mercury. And then for my interviews on the Age of Jeremy show, they're going to be for businesses, content creators, things of that nature. And then I'm working on another podcast, but one thing at a time. We do one thing at a time. Actually, I do lots of things one thing at a time, but we move them forward. And one of the ways that we can move those things forward is with leverage. But before we talk about leverage, I want to talk about what's going on this week at Jackson Hole. And if you don't know what Jackson Hole is, it is technically it's a place in, I think it's Wyoming. I'm not sure. I only care about it in the context of what I want to talk to you about, which is how it relates to the Fed. Jackson Hole is an annual conference hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City since 1978, and it is held every August in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, specifically near Grand Teton National Park. Teton. I don't know how to say that word. So I apologize. Sometimes I don't know how to say words. Sometimes I do know how to say words, and it all works out. And that's why I do podcasts, so I can say words incorrectly. It brings together central bankers, economists, academics, and finance ministers from around the world. And why it matters is the symposium is famous because Fed chairs often use it to signal major policy shifts. It's less formal than congressional testimony, but markets treat these speeches there as big clues about future monetary policy. To give some examples, in 2010, Ben Bernanke hinted at qualitative easing two, or I said quantitative easing round two. And in 2020, Jerome Powell unveiled the Fed's new inflation framework, average inflation targeting. So the topics that are usually discussed there are global monetary policy, inflation and interest rates, financial stability, and long-term economic challenges like demographics, productivity, and climate impacts. And the reason why investors watch this so close is a single line from Fed chair or from a Fed chair or the Fed chair at Jackson Hole can move stocks, it can move bonds and currencies worldwide. So most markets, it can probably even move the crypto market to this extent now. It's often where the Fed prepares markets for policy shifts, such as rate hikes, cuts, or new strategies. So I encourage you to read up on Jackson Hole and to make it a part of something that you look at every year to kind of get an idea of where the economy is headed. Now, the Jackson Hole Symposium takes place August 21st through the 23rd, I think it is. And if you want to watch it, you can head on over to the Federal Reserve of Bank of Kansas City, which is the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas that holds the symposium, but they hold it in Wyoming. But you can watch it on their YouTube. So just YouTube Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas, and you should be able to watch the event or at least see highlights of the event. Or I don't know, when you're going to get a coffee break, go watch the event and be like, oh my gosh, I got to go make some investment decisions, depending on whatever your investment strategies are. But it's something to be something that I believe that all individuals should look at. And that's one of the things that we really try hard to in our 3T Warrior Academy is to educate people on not only the things that are happening around the world, but also to be actively involved with understanding those things so that you can make better decisions for yourself and your family. But the reason why I wanted to bring up Jackson Hole is because, you know, this is a time where Jerome Powell has the opportunity to set up the stage for what he plans to do with the interest rates moving forward. Because as you know, or you may not know, and that's maybe why you're listening to this, he's been under a lot of pressure from the Trump administration to lower the interest rates because he's kept those interest rates high. And I think it was last month, he didn't lower them, or in August, he didn't lower them and kept them where they were at. And so I believe that the last time that there was any change in the interest rates was back in 2024 in December. And I'm not sure if he lowered them or raised them then, but again, President Trump is pushing for them to be lowered. And Powell has reason to hedge Jackson Hole signal as data Zigags. And this is from Bloomberg's. It's by Amara Omiokawa. And if you're in my Insights and Updates broadcast channel, I'm going to push this over there so as you're listening to this, you should be able to go to there and see it because I'm recording this on August 18th. You're hopefully listening to it on August 19th or sometime in the future. So in my Age of Jeremy Instagram Dope Insights and Updates, there's a free article there that you should be able to access. If you're not able to access it, just reach out to me. Jerome Powell has the ideal platform this Friday, the 21st, to deliver a clear signal that the Federal Reserve is about to resume cutting interest rates. But the economy isn't giving him an equally clear signal that now is that time. The Fed chair's annual speech in Jackson Hole, Wyoming can be an opportunity to flag the policy shifts, as I mentioned. Powell used it for that purpose last year and delivered a big cut soon after, and I think that was the cut in December. And he's under intense pressure from President Donald Trump for a repeat performance. Trouble is the key economic indicators aren't all pointing that way. A couple of weeks ago, when the latest job report revealed a slump in hiring, the case for lower rates appeared all but closed. Then came the sharpest spike in U.S. household prices in 3 years, fuel for the concern about tariff-led inflation that's kept Fed officials on hold so far this year. So as I said at the beginning of the year, as those tariffs start to roll out, we won't see some of that stuff change until closer to the end of the year. So those tariffs that are in place are increasing the prices on wholesale goods, and that is causing concern for whether or not we should lower the interest rates. All of this adds to the already intense scrutiny on Jackson Hole. Now, Powell last month described the labor market as solid and policy as well positioned. Investors will listen keenly for even a tiny shift on either front, which could open the door to cut at the Fed's next meeting on September 16th or 17th. But with more economic numbers due before then, the Fed chief may prefer to keep his message carefully hedged. Now, this is a quote from Jonathan Pingle, chief U.S. economist at UBS Securities. Even though I expect him to generally point to lower rates at the next meeting, I do expect him to precondition it on a very data dependent message. And he said, I don't think he's going to lock it in. And so the reason why I want to bring this up to you is because we're living in a time where if we do lower these interest rates, a lot of cash is going to be flooded into the system. And if there is a lot of cash that's flooded into the system, it's going to go along the narrative of Trump wanting to wreck the dollar, get the dollar cost lower to build whatever kind of America that he wants to build, where we're manufacturing stuff and our labor market's different and we're getting different GDP from different areas, which I technically agree with the GDP from different areas. One of the things that has hurt the United States over the last 15, 20 years is we have really intensively became a country based off of financial goods and services, specifically services, and then also of real estate. And so we don't get a lot of our GDP from a lot of other places. Okay. And so that's really important, because one of the things that we need to be thinking about from an economic standpoint or about building the United States is how can we produce other types of goods and services. We don't really produce all that much stuff. In fact, one of the things that we produce the most of is probably PhD students. And unfortunately, most of those PhD students come over here on H-1B visas because the people that have an education in the United States don't have a really strong education, and they're not the ones that are going and becoming PhD students and doing the research and so forth. So we get a bunch of H-1B visas over here, we educate them, then they go and help us build the cool stuff that we need to build in technology, but then some of them go home, and if we don't allow that, then we're not even, building really strong educators here in the United States. So we have a lot of things that we need to work out on. But the one thing that I will mention is we probably should work on how we want the United States to create GDP. Do I think that that should be from old time manufacturing stuff? Maybe. It could mean that we do that, but then we all have to come to a consensus on whether or not we want our prices of goods to come down, or we want to take jobs at lower wages. And over time, that should lower the amount of money that we are bringing in, which hopefully will then lower those goods and we can deflate some of the stuff in the economy. But again, I just encourage you to take some time this weekend. I'm going to try to watch as much of it as I can because, again, I'm a financial person. But also, I'm a liver. I live in the United States, or a liver of the United States, and I want to see the United States prosper. And I hope that each of you do too if you live here in the United States. And so, again, we need to be educating ourselves on what's happening in the world. So check out the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City's YouTube channel, and they should have live coverage of the Jackson Hole event this weekend. And I think that this should be a good opportunity for you to make it a regular thing where you at least watch this economic event of the year.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I've talked about this before on the podcast. I want to talk about it again because it's not the only thing that I'm really focused on with our businesses, but it's one of the main things that I'm focused on with the businesses. There's a clip from Gary Vaynerchuk where he says someone's asking him like, "How can I scale my business?" And he says, "Hire people." And the truth is you have to be able to scale businesses. And the only way that you can scale businesses is by having work completed in the business. And the fact is that work takes up time. Your time is limited by whatever hours that you can put in. If you follow me, I believe that entrepreneurs should be putting in between 50 and 60 hours a week. I think anything over that, you don't have your efficiency goes down. And I think that quality of life can also go down with it. But again, if you work 55 hours a week, you're going to work a whole other week a month than the people that aren't working 55 hours a week. So as long as you're staying efficient and you're not burning yourself out, you can literally just outwork most people by working those long hours. The key is maintaining that efficiency. And so for you, you might be able to go over 60 and 70 main efficient. I have found that my efficiency really starts to get messed up at around 70 hours a week. So I've pulled it really far back to that 55 and 60. But again, to my point, time of work, right? If there is work being done, it's taking up time. And so the only way to get more work done is to have more people allotting time to that work. And so you have to have people that you want to hire. And so for me, if you follow me, or you're in part of our academy, you might know that I have no interest. I will always be working. I'll be at least to some extent like a Warren Buffett, where I'm going to the office, I'm reading investment stuff, I'm investing in, businesses and just focusing on investments. Okay. Or I might be making content forever. I used to joke around when I started my podcast here, that I would be doing this podcast till the day that I die and talking about the stuff that I'm doing in my life for the most part until the day that I die. And so I'll probably still have this podcast. I'll still be going to an office. I'll probably own the office at that point in time. I'll probably have multiple businesses. I'll probably focus on board work, which are sitting on boards for nonprofits and for-profit corporations. And I'm fine with that. Okay. But I'm also taking the money, right, that I'm getting and I'm investing it in newer businesses or in other businesses that I own that I want to get up and running. And two of those are Q Financial, pushing that more, and also Age of Radio. And I'm to a point where I've been saving and storing money or saving money, and the goal is to utilize that money for leverage. And it's not leverage to get more money to borrow against. It's a leverage to the extent of expensing it by getting more team members involved and getting more people spending more time in my businesses. Because when you have that, it goes back to what I just said, that if I have another person working 55 hours a week in my business, then we are working both 10 weeks in 1 month. We have energy going towards a specific business. And that is how, and then you focus on getting those things more efficient. And that's how you can really grow and leverage. So one of the things that sets most people back on their entrepreneur journey is that they start a business and then they don't have enough cash flow to have the other people in it because they need to take cash flow to pay for those things. That's why side hustles and starting your business slow and growing it over time while you still have money to feed your family, to do stuff with your kids, start your life, invest and stuff like that, you can really hedge yourself. It might take a while to get the business going, but you can really hedge yourself for success by doing that, because then you can take that money and you can put it into employees. That's why I made sure that we had a team in place before I started taking any money from 3T Warrior Academy. I worked at the bank. That's when I was doing maybe 60, 70, 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week at sometimes between the two businesses for many years, because that's what it takes to hedge yourself and not put yourself in a position where you have to pay yourself from the money that's coming in from the business. And so hedging employees and hiring people and having a team around me is one of the top things that I'm trying to work on right now, so that I can have multiple pieces of me going out in the world and building my Q Financial business with me and building Age of Radio with me. So in finance, leverage is usually using borrowed capital to amplify returns. And in business, human leverage is your in business, employees equal human leverage that multiplies the output of the founders and leaders. And again, this only goes back to time being finite. Employees expand your capacity, Every hire adds hours and skills you couldn't cover alone. So, for example, I have a Toshi, our ad sales manager. He's sending out hundreds of emails, messages a day vis-a-vis LinkedIn. I think he's getting in the process of moving back from Japan to the United States. So he might not actually be working this week. I don't know. I have to check with him. But point is those messages should be going out. Now he's working on ad marketing emails that'll be going out twice a month for our marketing, or talking about marketing for podcasting and getting our ad sales and marketing revenue up. And so again, that's this other person that's now putting out this energy. So then my goal is to then, with my time with him, coach him, make sure that he's hiring, getting people, bringing them in, talking to them about the process, the products and things like that, so that we can sell them the ads. Okay. And so that's what I mean. Like, time's finite. So you have to add more time, and to add more time of work, you have to add employees. The other thing is employees, when you hire people and they're really skilled, employees bring specialized knowledge to the table. So for example, while I enjoy uh, coding, and I enjoy making the apps, right? My time should be spending on the design of the application, and then I need to hire or partner with employees or team members to leverage their specialized knowledge to then create the coding that I need. Okay. Or in the case of Toshi, he has really good ad copy skills because he went to school for advertising. I can use him for the copy, which I've done twice. Now it's getting the person in place to build the ads and the other things that we need, and then we can market those things out there and bring in leads. So again, when you have other people, you have other skill sets that you don't have to go and spend time to learn them all. Now, while I do think that you should have a broad understanding of a lot of different topics, it doesn't mean you have to be. That's something that I want to do. But again, if you have that, then you can make better decisions and understand what those other people are doing to make sure that it, like, some idea or in some way, that they're doing it the correct way, I guess. Okay. So a great team, right? If you have a bunch of people around you, it lets you execute complex strategies that a solo person could never really pull off on their own. And that's why team members and leverage is so important. And you can never, ever build a large team if you don't have a strong group of employees that are working for you and doing things. Okay. So the next thing is, the more employees that you train well, the more knowledge and systems that they then create, and that builds the organizational memory. Okay, that's how you have a compounding effect. So as they go and create processes and they go and create things in place, then that thing is in place for the organization, and that's how you can scale and get larger amounts of processes in place to move the company further and faster, and make it bigger and scale it. The other thing that happens is a productive employee doesn't just cover their salary, they create multiples of value. So a lot of the times when we're hiring someone, they're they're not only going to create the revenue for themselves, they're going to create other things that are inside of the business that then create more profit for the business as well, especially if you get an experienced team member. Right. And so, like with the case of Atoshi, like for me, he'll be the one that creates revenue for the company as we get our shit together on how we go and market our product offerings for ad inventory on the Age of Radio podcast network. Okay. Because he's getting better at it every day. I'm working on getting on to more calls. He's working on getting me more calls. I'm working on getting him more training. I'm working on getting him to make the copy for the ads and lead the whole thing. And as he creates those things and starts those things, he'll be the driver of the revenue. But on top of that, he'll also be placing things in place where we can add more pieces in that then create more revenue faster, because we have all the processes in place from everything that he has been doing, right? So they create these mounds of productivity that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So one of the things that then comes with that, though, as you start to scale those, is you not only want to find the right people with the right skill set, okay? You then want to make sure that you retain them, because it's much easier, it's much more difficult to go and get a new team. It's more difficult to get a new team member, train them up. Like it would be very more, it's easier now for me to pour more fire and energy into Atoshi than to go and find another salesperson. If I still believe that Atoshi has the skill set and the drive to do the things that we need to do, because if I lose that, then it deleverages me. Okay. And so that's why when you start to see like all the metrics that go around employees and human resources of getting them to stay and so forth. That's why you have these things, because again, hiring the team member creates the leverage. If you lose that team member, you then lose the leverage and you delever. So it's really, really important that you create a strong culture. It's really important that you have retention metrics. It's really important that you have training so that you preserve what you've invested in with all these people. So then what ends up happening is you can accelerate this by then growing those people into leaders. Leaders decide where to place human leverage. So right now, as the main leader, I'm the one that needs to place the human leverage where I need it to be to pull that lever to create the thing. There's a very good, big, really great quote. I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't have it right in front of me. Supposedly, this was a conversation that Steve Wozniak had with Steve Jobs. Steve Wozniak was like, well, what do you really create? What do you do? Because he was the one that was actually creating the software. And, then they had the other engineers and the developers and so forth. And Steve Jobs essentially said he's the orchestrator. He's the one that pulls the levers to get those things to move. And those are the great leaders. And those are the leaders that you want to find. And when you find those people in your organization, you make them the leaders, because then they can accelerate that growth by getting more people into place and start pulling that lever so that those people can go and do amazing things. And you start this compounding effect. And that's how you build really, really large organizations and create really big companies. Good leadership turns employees into force multipliers. Bad leadership turns them into cost centers. So again, you have to have good leaders that are compassionate, where they're not always empathetic with the individual. They're compassionate in the sense that they're making sure that they're doing the things that are going to create the best benefit for the employees in the future based off of the actions that they and the rest of the team members take. So businesses scale not because of founders working harder, but because employees multiply the founder's vision. So there has to be a point in every business where you're finding money, you're finding revenue, you're taking less if you need to, you're cutting expenses where you need to deploy that money into human capital. And that's the main thing that I am focused on right now in every single business and manifesting in every single business. Because if we are going to get to be $1 billion corporation, if we're going to hit our $10 million targets in our businesses that we want to hit within the next, year, 2 years, it's going to take having the right people in the right places, doing more things, putting more time towards the business, which is leverage, right? When we look at our sales team for 3T Warrior Academy, we just hired 2 new salespeople. We have 4 salespeople now. Leverage. That's happened since the beginning of the year. Imagine where we're going to be at next year with those 4 people. If they're tied into the vision, if they're tied into the culture, where they will be taking us, focusing just on those sales. If we have another individual in our tech team with Dustin, what is going to be going on? Like, what can we do faster with processes, technology, building the infrastructure that we need to grow our entire organization? If we take that piece of it, if we take that piece right with Dustin and put him over a larger organization, get him more people, what can you do? Same thing with Josh and media, right? So you have to look at those things, and there has to be a right time. Like there has to be like, okay, is that person at capacity? Are we at capacity with the individuals that we have? How can we add now to then grow it to where we need to be, right? There is also an efficiency standpoint. You don't want to just go out and hire people. You want to hire people, get them going, create the leverage till you max out the time, right? You max out the time, the 55 hours a week, the 40 hours a week. Like, I know it sounds great. I push everybody to work 55 to 60 hours a week. I feel that I'm not going to make people do that. I'm going to push people by incentivizing them to work more, work harder, be more efficient. I'll incentivize them, and then we can grow all of the things that we need to grow to build the large organizations that I know that we're building into the future. But again, if they're not at that capacity, whether that's 40 or 50 or whatever, then they need to be more efficient, and we can keep adding stuff until their efficiency maxes out at where we decide that that's the amount of work. We add more people than that person adds to that. We can add more work to that, get that person at max efficiency, and keep going. And that's how you build large organizations. The problem that ends up happening, and I think that this happened with X or Twitter, was that they didn't have people at max capacity, one, for when they started adding more people. And then they added more people because they thought that they didn't have a clear strategy of what those people would be doing if they allocated those resources to it. That's my own opinion. I don't know that for sure. But what I do know is that X is still running. X is still supposedly making money, and they cut most of the people from the organization. And again, it's because you weren't at max efficiency capacity because they weren't being led properly, in my opinion. Do I think that X had a better culture or Twitter had a better culture than X? 100%. I think X is a shit show as far as the content that's going out there. But I think as far as the things that they've added to the app, I think that they are moving the app maybe in the right direction. I think that they need to have a better CEO that's working on it. And I think that I get the sense that they have a vision, but that vision isn't really clear on how it's being communicated to the public and maybe even to the employees. But not to go off on a tangent here. The point is that you will not get to where you want your business to be if it's just you in the business. You have to find a way to get other people working with you, for you, at you in the business for you to scale. All right. Remember, be thankful, grateful, and kind, and we'll talk with you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the Age of Jeremy. If you liked this episode, make sure that you like it. If you like the podcast, make sure that you give it a rating, share it with a friend if your podcatcher allows you to. And the opening song was Can't Be Cool Forever by Medium Build. The closing song was Mutable by Spanish Love Songs. I'm recording into a Neumann microphone, into a Zoom L8, into Cubase, Steinberg's Cubase, and I use Waves plugins in post. And one last time, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk with you soon. Bye.
I could picture sinking in. Wish I could live my life until I die.